Hi, and welcome to another episode of The Zombie Specialist. I'm here today with Mr. Glenn Harris, who is an archery coach. Part of his background is that he has been the head coach of 3 Paralympic teams and the assistant coach on 2 Olympic teams, and has over 33 years of experience in the collegiate level. We're going to be discussing today the viability of using archery as a means of defense during the zombie apocalypse. Welcome, Mr. Harris.
Thank you very much. Appreciate being here.
Can you give me a little bit more background on yourself and your experience?
My background in archery stems primarily through the target arena for compound bow and Olympic recurve bow. My specialty has always been sort of the strategy and the psychology versus the physics of the equipment, and team building situations, and strictly as a games player.
Okay. Is archery something that would be useful in a survival situation, in particular the zombie apocalypse?
To be completely honest about it, I see archery as a sustainable means of defense in the strictest form of survival. But as far as fending off a zombie horde or something like that, I think there are better choices.
Now, say for somebody like me who does not have a lot of experience with archery, what would be the best method I could use to train myself to handle this?
It actually takes a great deal of practice. This is something that you'd want to do on a daily basis.
Okay. So a couple hours every day?
Maybe a couple of hours every day. Again, it's going to depend on the equipment that you're using, what's available to you,
Right.
and exactly what your plan is.
Okay.
Archery is going to require a plan. Whether you're just building something, just a stick bow from the woods, out of material found in the woods, or whether you're building something mechanical that you bought from something around the house like PVC pipe or different materials, aluminum can be used, a number of different materials can be used. Archery is a very primitive sport, and it's been around for probably 50,000 years.
Wow.
And there really wasn't much change in the sport in the beginning, in the early years, until it became a weapon of war. And then with many things, what war brings on development. And archery began to develop then. So because of the fact that archery became a tool of war, and then a tool of sport, and the space technology that came with it, with today, archery has gone from just a stick and a string tied to it to a very sophisticated, very complicated piece of equipment. But it all still comes down to the person who's pulling the string back.
Right. Okay. You mentioned several times about the differences in the equipment. Say in the case of a zombie apocalypse, there's not really a whole lot of people left around. People can go into a sports store, pick out a bow. What kinds of things should people be looking for, and what kind of bow they would choose?
Well, I would be looking for something that I could shoot rapidly, that I could repeat the process quickly over and over and over. A typical hunting bow these days would be a compound bow. It's very similar to this one right here that we have here. This is a very typical compound bow. It's a mechanical device. It works on the eccentrics on either end of the 2 limbs to allow you to relax the lead off as you draw the bow back. This one also has a fiber optic sight that's adjustable, and it has a quiver mounted to the bow for holding a series of arrows. The problem with a piece of equipment like this is you have to go to the full process of the bow before you can release it.
Oh.
So you have to go through the entire cycle of the draw force before you can release it in order for it to be effective.
What would happen if you didn't do that?
You'd give up all kinds of energy. You wouldn't get the performance out of it that it's designed to give you. Now, this is going to give you a fast arrow, and through a typical game, a deer or an elk, the arrow is going to pass right through.
Wow.
Completely.
That's a lot of force.
Through a human being, it won't even slow down, probably
Wow.
at all. In fact, a person who gets shot with an arrow doesn't even feel it.
So that leads me to my next question of what kinds of arrows and tips would you recommend in the case of not necessarily hunting game, but in the instance of a zombie apocalypse? Because something that we have discussed in the past, not us personally, but on this series, is how to take out a zombie. If you take out a zombie's brain or you hit them in the brain stem, that'll usually take them out. So what kinds of tips would you recommend for that, and how?
Modern broadhead tips these days are pretty effective. They're razor sharp. I have a typical one here. Well, I don't want to show that one. That's a crossbow bolt. This is a all carbon arrow, and this is a 4-blade. This is an old Wasp, because what the brand name is, and it has 4 blades that are as sharp as a razor to shave with.
Ooh.
So as this carbon steel point penetrates flesh, the blade's going to go through rotating and slicing and dicing as it goes.
Be a pretty effective weapon then.
Pretty effective.
Okay.
But for someone like you, it's going to keep on going. It's not
Right.
going to hang with you. It's going to stay. Now, what would really be good is they have other blades out there that open up.
Really?
As it penetrates the flesh, the blades actually open up.
Whew.
And that would slow down going through. And
But it would cause a lot more
It's
damage.
going to stay a lot more damage on the inside. Archery, the kill isn't made by trauma like it is with a gunshot.
Right.
Archery, the kill is made by bleed out. So we're trying to create as much hemorrhage as possible, so that whatever you're shooting at will run off, away from whatever it hit it. It doesn't know it was shot with an arrow. But eventually it'll get tired. It'll lay down. It'll go to sleep, and it won't wake up.
Okay. That's good to know.
That's the primary thing.
So in reality, then, if you were to shoot a zombie in the head, chances are it might slow down a little bit, but it wouldn't die right away.
Well, it depends on where the hit is. Now, if we put it through his skull, take the brain out, we're done.
Okay.
Okay. If we have a large enough if we get searched through the throat, clip the spinal cord, we're done again.
Right.
But those are pretty small targets.
Pretty hard to hit.
Could be pretty hard to hit.
Okay.
Especially, when your heart's pumping and you're thinking about your own
Right.
demise here.
Right. Right.
Not much game out there is coming after you.
Right. Well, that brings to mind another question. Would it be more effective to use something like a crossbow with a crossbow bolt than it would be to use a bow and arrow?
Well, that's a good question. The thing is, a crossbow bolt uses the exact same kind of point.
Uh-huh.
They screw into the end of the arrow. They're very, very universal. And the thing about crossbows, and this is a typical crossbow right here, is it's high power for very short range.
Okay.
Very accurate, but this particular one, you cock it one at a time. It's a very slow process.
Right.
A very slow process. So you got to make that first shot count.
Now, with a human being target moving at you, somebody with your experience, as compared to somebody with no experience like me, do you think that you would be able to effectively, with all of your training, use that bow and arrow or a crossbow as a means of defense? I mean, me personally, I don't think I would probably be able to, because I don't have the experience. But you, with all of your experience, I mean, you're our expert here. Do you think you would be able to?
I do.
Okay.
But I would have to have some kind of strategy in place.
What would you recommend as far as a strategy?
For example, if it's a zombie, I'd want to slow it down. Knowing how to kill a zombie, I think the best option would be to pump as many arrows into it as I can on the big target to try and slow it down, stop it, get its attention, and set it up for the next shot or the headshot.
What kinds of extra and spare parts should you have, not only for the crossbow, but for the bow and arrow?
You can't have too many arrows. Back in the medieval times, when villages and castles and whole kingdoms were dependent on archers for their armies, particularly in England, that was somebody's job. That all he did all day long was build arrows.
Okay.
Somebody else built bows, and that's what they did. And so when they would go out, if you approached a castle, for example, all the people who have been gathered inside the castle, the protection of the castle, but you'd have 20,000 guys launching arrows over the wall at the same time.
So definitely more archers, more arrows is definitely a better solution than just one.
Absolutely.
But if you didn't have anybody else with you, I mean, in all reality, and I think I asked you this before, but I just want to ask again, would this be a viable way of defense if you were on your own? Even if it was just to slow them down enough so that you could get away? I mean, in your expert opinion.
I don't think so. I think there are better ways. There are better things that you could possibly do in a one-on-one situation, given the moment, and that's what you have at hand. Then absolutely,
Right.
I mean, absolutely, that's what you got to do. But because it's a tool that you can still use at some range. So if it fails, you have an out.
What's a standard effective range, let's say, for that particular bow that you showed right there?
The hunting compound bow.
Yes.
Effective range is probably anywhere from about 10 yards to about 80 yards.
Okay. What about on the crossbow?
The crossbow, again, it's going to be about maybe 10 to 20 feet to about maybe 20 to 30 yards at the most.
Okay.
Crossbows are very fast, very powerful at first,
Right.
but they diminish energy very, very quickly. Crossbows were invented by the Chinese and used by the French because the French built broadheads that could penetrate English armor,
Ah,
and that's what they were designed. That's what they were designed to do.
didn't know that. Didn't know
But the English used the famous longbows, and the reason they could do that is because a longbow you can cast arrow maybe a dozen in a minute,
It's a good rate of fire.
as opposed to a crossbow. You're talking about one every couple of minutes.
Well, now that you bring that up, what is the advantage of the longbow over, say, something like this right here?
Once again, we have an issue with the longbow has a greater cast ability or downrange ability.
Okay. Okay.
The horsebow, the very short horsebow, this is very typical of the bows that Genghis Khan used, were for very short targets,
Okay.
very close range.
Okay.
Powerful, efficient, but very short ranged.
Okay. Good to know. What kind of sights are available as far as using a bow and arrow, and what would you recommend for an instance such as this?
Well, there's all kinds of sights available. I mean, this particular hunting sight is a fiber optic pin, very typical for hunting equipment right now. But if I was an approaching enemy or zombie coming at me, I wouldn't even be worried about the sight.
Right.
I'd be pumping as many arrows at his direction as I could.
So just basically no sights at
Yeah,
all,
just
and
let
just
'em
as
go.
quickly as you can get them out.
Yeah.
Okay.
That's where faith in my skill and my training comes into play. Knowing what to do and how to respond with a particular piece of equipment.
Is there anything else that you can tell us as far as equipment and, particularly like about the arrows and the types of arrowheads?
There's as many different kinds of arrowheads out there as there are game or uses for the arrows. It all comes down to what you can make work out of your bow and what particular game you're trying to take down. I mean, if you're shooting birds or squirrels or small game, use a different kind of an arrowhead. If you're shooting a larger game, deer, elk, bear, that's going to be a different head again. There's an arrowhead that just came out called the guillotine, and it's for turkeys. It's designed to slice the turkey's head off.
Oh, wow. Well, would something like that be
Something
effective
like that
in taking out a zombie?
Yeah, if there were zombies coming my way, I'd be wanting some of those.
All right.
Definitely.
Good deal. Good deal.
Definitely.
Okay, well, that was all the questions that I had for you. Thank you for the interview. It was
You're very welcome.
very informative.
You're very welcome.
And that's
Good luck.
it. Yeah, that's all we got for today. Obviously, archery, folks, isn't the viable first option that we maybe initially thought. And I hope that we've given you some great tips and advice on if you're in a pinch and you absolutely need to use archery as a means of defense. Hopefully we've given you some good information here on how to go about it. It's obviously not a good first choice, but if you absolutely need to, there you go. You've got everything you need to know, spoken by the expert. We hope you've enjoyed it, and we'll see you next time. Awesome, guys. Thanks for checking us out. Thanks for watching this video. Don't forget to like and share this video. Share it with your friends. Could help one of them out. Also, we want you to subscribe to our channel because we got more of these videos coming out, and we want to keep you safe and we want to keep you informed. So thanks again. Talk to you soon.